and we will move on to our next bill. Representative Williams, this is your second bill of the evening, House Bill 5250, a resolution creating a special legislative commission to study ensuring racial equality and optimizing health and safety laws affecting marginalized individuals. You have the floor. Go right ahead.
Thank you. This resolution would create a 13-member special legislative commission whose purpose it would be to study the health and safety impact of optimizing health and safety laws affecting marginalized individuals. The purpose of this commission will be to make a comprehensive study and provide recommendations on the health and safety impact of revising laws related to commercial sexual activity, identifying the methods of human trafficking and exploitation to develop strategies to reduce these activities, and ensuring accountability in the treatment of marginalized and targeted communities by police. There has been significant research on the safety and health impact of laws specifically related to violence, exploitation, stigma, human trafficking, and sexual health, but more needs to be done analyzing all those data. These laws disproportionately impact women, transgender individuals, and people of color. Police treatment and behavior of marginalized and targeted community, especially Black people and transgender women, is being highlighted and addressed throughout our nation and the state right now of Rhode Island. And it is imperative upon us to ensure justice and accountability in the way our laws impact our citizens. Now, let's have grown folks conversation just for a second. The bottom line here is when it comes to personal things, when it comes to something as personal as this, some of you, and not necessarily you that's before me, but I will use the word, some of you have a squirmish way about you that you prefer not to speak about sex. But we have to speak about a lot of things. We have to get used to being uncomfortable, being comfortable, being uncomfortable. This is a matter that has been being looked at, being talked about behind closed doors, and nobody is doing the right things about it. The women and people of color are being ill-treated continuously for years, and it continues. We have to give this topic and these individuals an open forum to understand what exactly is their fear, their concerns, their needs. They're no different than any one of us that will make a decision before on this bill. Right now, all is being asked is for a commission, a study commission, where 13 individuals and other experts will come and provide, discuss, analyze, and then present findings of something and areas that we are not so comfortable talking about and doing something about. So I'm not sure how many people have signed up to testify, but you're going to hear stories, factual stories. And I'm asking you to have an open mind and listen to the grown folks' conversation. And, you know, like many of you, oftentimes it's like shrugging things off your shoulder because it's not part of your life. You believe it could never happen to you. You're too primitive donna and all this kind of stuff. And that goes for both men and women. Or you're set on your way, but the reality of the fact is, two consenting adults, what they choose to do for and with each other is their business. Regardless what lifestyle you carry, You cannot and should not infringe on someone else's lifestyle. And it's only a matter of saying, if you expect respect, then you also should give it. Stay out of my bedroom and I won't come into yours. So with that, I will leave it open for any witnesses to come up and further educate you all more articulately than I have, because I really want to get real, but some of you can't handle it. You are not ready to handle it. And I would rather come real in my entirety on the floor than just with the individuals that are here. And with that, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, I will turn it over to those who are going to bring you all some stories that may or may not interest you.
Thank you, Representative Williams, for your testimony. I appreciate your efforts. We are going to have verbal testimony from, it looks like, up to 10 or 11 people. Everyone is in favor. Just for the record, I will let you know that we have written testimony from 2 people, a Ramona Flower, who is in favor, as well as Laurel Leak, who is also in favor. And at the end of the hearing, I will read the rest of the list, because we have 3 pages, 38 other witnesses who have provided written testimony. So we will now go to our first verbal witness, unless there are any committee members that have a question for Representative Williams at this time.
I have a question, though.
Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman. On the 3 pages of individuals who sent in or
Written testimony?
some written testimony, how many of them are for or against the bill?
Representative Williams, there is not one person who is against this legislation.
Oh, well, that must mean that all the folks that signed up like sex. That's a good thing.
That's a good thing.
Everybody smiled except the prudes.
Thank you, Representative Williams. Okay, I'm going to move to our first virtual testimony. Who do we have on the line, Chris? Hello, this is Representative Casey, the chairman of the House Health and Human Services Committee. Who am I speaking with?
Hi. This is Barb Brentz.
Bob?
Uh-huh.
Yes.
Barb.
Barb, I'm sorry, B-A-R-B?
Yes.
Thank you, Bob. You are here testifying on House Bill 5250. Representative Williams has done a tremendous job in introducing this legislation in favor of starting a study commission. If you would, we have quite a few people who are going to testify. If you would keep your commentary brief and to the point, we would appreciate it. But you have the floor and you have our attention. Go right ahead.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you having me here. I am a professor. Used to talk in an hour, but I will not do that today. My name is Barb Brentz. I'm for H.R. 5250 to create this study commission. I'm a professor in the sociology department at the University of Nevada, Las Vegas. I've spent nearly 25 years researching commercial sex in the U.S. and in other countries. I've published 2 books, one recently on demand for sex work and several peer-reviewed articles. I've given talks around the globe and worked with scholars in other countries as we examine the politics, culture, organization, and labor practices in the sex industry and the way gender, class, and racial inequalities intersect. It's a complicated subject, which is why I'm so thrilled to see you considering your own study on the conditions and laws in your great state. A lot of my research has been on Nevada's unique 100-year-old legal sex industry, which takes place in the rural counties within brothels. Our studies find that workers there report feeling safer. They have the backing of law in enforcing condom use. Like other independent contractors, they can choose where, how, to work, share info on clients, report violence, hire lawyers. But the local array of laws, worker health and safety protections, is really key. I wouldn't recommend adopting the Nevada model writ large. It's precisely because no one-size-fits-all that you really need this study. Research on Nevada has made clear that sexual commerce can happen in a safe environment that allows individuals to earn a legitimate income with basic human rights. Our laws here can be improved, and in fact, the Nevada legislature passed a study committee bill last session, so you're not alone, though COVID put that on hold for a while. But evidence makes clear throughout the globe that exchanging sex for money is not in and of itself problematic outside of the context in which it occurs. The evidence is clear that laws criminalizing the sex industry can cause more harm than good, especially for vulnerable and marginalized populations. I applaud the makeup of the study commission currently in your bill. It's crucial to include sex workers as well as the array of folks that are going to be affected. We know that tough on crime laws have negatively impacted already marginalized communities. Criminalizing consensual prostitution has prevented sex worker access to justice, needed social service, and overcrowded our jail system. I would really urge you to pass H.R. 5250, find the right laws, and thanks for listening to science. That's it.
Thank you, Barb, for your testimony. Is there any member of the committee that has a question for our witness? Hearing none. Thank you, Barb. We're going to move on to our next witness. Melissa? Hello, Melissa?
Yes. Yes, I'm here.
Hi, Melissa. This is Representative Casey. I'm chairman of the House Health and Human Services Committee. We have you here testifying before our committee virtually on House Bill 5250. If you would keep your commentary brief and to the point of the legislation, we would appreciate that. You have our attention and the floor. Go right ahead.
Sure. So thank you so much. I'm here to speak briefly in support of House Resolution 5250. Thank you so much for considering this incredibly important issue. I'm an attorney and longtime advocate for people in the sex trade, including survivors of human trafficking. I am a New Yorker, but I went to Brown, and that is actually where I began my interest in this issue. I actually did my undergraduate thesis 20 years ago, exactly 20 years ago, on this exact issue, and subsequently went to law school and also got my master's in public health to figure out ways that we can better support the health and safety and rights of all people in the sex trade. Because certainly we, and in New York, Rhode Island, and so many states are just not doing it correctly. It is so imperative that we have laws based on data and evidence rather than morality or puritanical feelings. We really need to look at the data, as Chairwoman Williams so rightly said. So as I've seen, and I'll be very brief, but as an attorney for sex workers and survivors, I've seen time and again that criminalization creates immense trauma, immense boundaries for people who are in the sex industry to move forward with their lives. And so I am thrilled that Rhode Island is considering to look at all of the data and how our laws impact especially the most marginalized people. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Melissa, for your testimony. We appreciate that. Are there any committee members that have a question for Melissa? Okay, thank you, Melissa. We're going to move on to our next witness. Hello, Robin. Hello, Robin.
Yes, hello.
Hi, this is Representative Casey. I'm the chairman of the House Health and Human Services Committee. We have you before us to testify on House Bill 5250 regarding setting up a study commission. If you would keep your testimony brief and to the point, we would appreciate it, and we may have some questions for you afterward. Go right ahead, please.
Absolutely. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, yes. So I want to begin by thanking the Health and Human Services Committee for allowing me to provide testimony today. It's a great privilege to speak to you to discuss House Bill 5250. My name is Robin Lindy, and I'm a professor at Rhode Island College in political science, and I'm also the legislative coordinator for the state of Rhode Island for Amnesty International, as well as the local coordinator for our local group, Amnesty PVD. So I speak here today in my capacity as an active member and a local leader of Amnesty International USA and Amnesty PVD to share the position of Amnesty on issues pertaining to human rights and sex work. So as you may know, Amnesty International is a nonpartisan, non-governmental organization that's been working on human rights issues for 60 years. We have over 10 million members, supporters, and activists internationally, and hundreds of local groups in all 50 states in the U.S. campaigning for human rights in their cities, in their countries, and around the world. Amnesty is committed to ensuring that all people enjoy the full spectrum of their human rights. We seek an end to policies that further endanger already marginalized people and support legislative efforts to improve the relationship of these communities with the police. So Amnesty's position on the rights of sex workers is based on years of research in multiple countries and extensive conversations with our membership and also discussions with civil society, including sex workers themselves. We advocate for the decriminalization of sex work, including laws that ban the buying, solicitation, and management of sex work. And we advocate for this position because evidence demonstrates that laws that prohibit these activities make sex workers less safe and foster impunity for those who exploit or who otherwise abuse sex workers. We believe that laws should seek an end to exploitation and violence instead of further marginalizing and endangering sex workers who engage in consensual activities. We ask that efforts to protect sex workers address the disproportionate impact of harassment, surveillance, and prosecution on racial and ethnic minorities and members of the lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and intersex communities. Amnesty International welcomes the study proposed by House Bill 5250, which would create a commission to study the impact of law enforcement policy related to sex work, as well as the impact on minority communities in our state. We request that individuals directly and currently engaged in sex work play a key role in developing policy that has an impact on them. We believe that it is imperative that affected communities have a part in designing and implementing the social, political, and legal effort to protect and empower them. So thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you very much, Robin. Are there any questions from the committee for Robin? Thank you, Robin. We're going to move on to our next testimony. Hello, Bella. Bella, would you please turn your device down so we can speak with you on the phone?
Got it. It's up.
Hi, Bella. This is Representative Casey from the House Health and Human Services Committee. You're here to testify on House Bill 5250. You have the attention of the committee. If you can keep your commentary brief as possible, we would appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for taking the time to hear what I have to say, and to Representative Williams for working for several years to get this far. My name is Bella Robinson. I am the Executive Director of Coyote, Rhode Island, and I have been involved in the sex industry for over 35 years. I'm a sought-out speaker at dozens of universities that recognize me as an expert on sex trafficking and sex work, and for the past 5 years, I have been conducting numerous research projects, so we have lots of data to bring in once we get the study commission, because there's no way we can do this in one hearing. There's just too much. But to sum it up, I want to tell you how we've got to this place 20 years after, we're 10 years into criminalization. We see the sex industry is still in Rhode Island, hasn't gone anyway. Trafficking's not gone up or down. This actually started by Congress creating trafficking funding. So they're paying out billions of dollars to nonprofits to create awareness on trafficking. And this is why you see billboards with 8-year-old white girls in brown and black hands over their mouths. They're also funded, they're not allowed to support decriminal harm reduction or kind of talk to sex workers. Their job is to host public trainings to teach the community how to spot trafficking, asking the community to be vigilantes and call the police if they spot a sex worker. Very little of this money trickles down to any victims. The victims are usually dumped at crossroads or other shelters and abandoned to live in poverty. So over the years, they've conflated so many numbers. We hear crazy things. 300,000 children are being exploited in America, and it's really become like QAnon and Pizzagate. There's a lot of stories. People want to make movies and write books, and even though they proved that story never happened. We recognize sex trafficking does happen. There's no one against sex trafficking more than sex workers. We have solutions, and we know if the government will cooperate up with us instead of criminalizing us, we can help reduce trafficking. We are the best tool law enforcement has to address trafficking. This does impact poor communities of color, especially women. No one's out policing male sex workers. No one seems to care about this. This is about girls and women. Which brings me to a quick little story. I hope you entertain me. That in 1917, the United States started something called the Plan. And this was because they thought sex workers and promiscuous women were spreading the disease, and they needed to protect the military men. So if you read the book, The Trials of Nina McCall, Sex Surveillance and Decade-Long Government Plan to Imprison Promiscuous Women, it was these women could be kidnapped. Any woman could be grabbed off the street for no reason. She could be eating lunch with a soldier. She could be doing anything. And she was just arrested, sexually assaulted, hauled off to imprisoned in detention centers where she was given arsenic and mercury, which didn't even treat gonorrhea or syphilis. And then they found out that 1 out of 4 military men already were infected when they enlisted. So many of these policies are based in racism. Over the last 10 or 20 years, Congress has spent billions of dollars funding nonprofits to promote this misinformation campaign on trafficking. They've also provided billions in extra funding to Homeland Security, the FBI, ICE, and other law enforcement agencies to travel the country hunting sex workers. And they still can't police 1% of the industry. Now, we understand a lot of people don't like sex workers. They don't like strip clubs. They don't like porn. They didn't like gay people, but gay people still got rights. So what we're asking today is to vote yes so we can study this, because by voting no, you're saying this population does not deserve any further consideration. And I'd be glad to answer any questions anyone has. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Are there any questions for our witness? Okay, we will move on to the next one. Thank you, Bella. Hello, Gregory. Gregory?
Hello.
Hi, this is Representative Casey, Chairman of the House Health and Human Services Committee. You're here testifying on House Bill 5250. We have heard from 5 witnesses. Everyone who has signed up is in favor. If you could please keep your commentary brief and to the point, we would appreciate it. You have the floor and you have our attention. Go right ahead.
Thank you very much. First of all, let me extend a very, very humble and grateful thank you to absolutely everybody who has come out from the community, from around the state, from other locations in the nation to testify and take part in what is a very wonderful opportunity to engage in our civic duty. I also want to thank the esteemed members of the committee. You all have a really thankless job in here. There have been, I think, 300 some odd pieces of legislation introduced across the 2 houses just yesterday. You all serve a very important role as gatekeepers for determining what goes out onto the floor. And by looking at things through the lens of folks that deal with health and services to human beings, we applaud you for always serving or seeking to serve all in our state. I'll keep it brief. There are a lot of really great things going on in our state this year, and this is an opportunity to empower a community that is truly up and coming, but on the margins and really vulnerable. Any person of conscience, any person of progressive values, any person that considers labor to be the backbone of not just our economy, but also of our American culture, can really get behind a study like this. This is a great opportunity to exercise everything that's beautiful and wonderful about being a Rhode Islander, leading the nation as we have before with decriminalization, with the respect and dignity of workers. Sex work is work. If you don't get paid for work, that's something completely different. And that's not what we want to see here in Rhode Island. We want to see our values upheld no matter what the industry is, no matter what the labor that our workers are engaged in looks like. We should value them as workers, contributing to the economy and so much more. This panel, this study panel, is going to be a really great thing once this law is passed, and this committee is convening into developing a study that will continue to help us form the best policy here in Rhode Island, and again, lead the nation in our sense of humanity and dignity to our fellow workers, and ensuring that hope and human rights for all isn't just something we put on the flag that one time. Thank you again for letting me come out. You know, I'll just, before I go, mention that we are all here in this state, in this area, on stolen land that was here. It was not ours when we came here, and Anglo-Europeans, a handful of centuries ago. The Pekanaket, the Wampanoag, the Narragansett people had already been here for millennia, and we owe them a deep, deep sense of gratitude for where we are right now. So that's the land tribute this evening. Again, thank you for your service to the state. Thanks again for letting us all testify tonight.
Thank you, Gregory. Are there any questions for our witness from the committee? Seeing none, we will move on to our next witness. Hello, Hannah Stern.
Hi.
Hi, Hannah. This is
Can you hear me?
Representative Casey from the House Health and Human Services Committee. You are here to testify on House Bill 5250. You have the floor. You have our attention. If you would please just keep your commentary brief as possible. Everyone who has testified prior and who will testify after is in favor of this legislation. Go right ahead.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And thank you, Chairman and members of the committee, for your time this evening. My name is Hannah Stern. I'm testifying on behalf of the ACLU of Rhode Island. The ACLU of Rhode Island really appreciates the opportunity to testify in support of this very important resolution, and we'd also like to thank Chairwoman Williams for her advocacy on this really important issue. The ACLU has long opposed laws which criminalize sexual activity between consenting adults, so we absolutely believe that this is the time to have a commission whose goal is to examine the impacts from the criminalization of sex work and to really holistically evaluate the value of decriminalizing the practice. Every so often in Rhode Island, there will be street stings conducted by different law enforcement agencies, and what typically happens is that there's a bit of media buzz, but ultimately the lasting effect is really inappropriate public embarrassment and the criminalization of adults who are just consensually seeking sexual conduct. And we really also emphatically reject the idea that giving arrest records to sex workers is appropriate at all. What this only does is serve to create a much more difficult and dangerous environment for sex workers in Rhode Island, and it also contributes to an entirely unjust stigmatization of sex workers and sex work overall. As this committee is aware, in 2009, the General Assembly amended a so-called quote-unquote loophole in the law which had which had allowed for indoor commercial sex activity. The revision of this law has since then only criminalized individuals engaging in, again, consensual sexual activity and has put marginalized individuals in more and not less danger. So it is certainly time for a fresh review of this law and the adverse consequences which have arisen from it. Again, the ACLU of Rhode Island strongly urges passage of this legislation, and thank you for your time and your consideration. I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Hannah. Are there any questions for Ms. Stern from the committee? Okay, we will move on to our next witness then. That'll be Chris. Is it Gabrielle? Okay, Gabrielle. Hello, Gabrielle?
Yes.
Yes, this is Representative Casey. I hope I pronounced your name right. You're here to testify on House Bill 5250. You have our attention. You have the floor. If you could just keep your commentary brief. Everyone who is testifying this evening is in favor of this legislation, so go right ahead.
Thank you. I appreciate your time tonight. I am autistic, so if I say something that is unclear, please let me know and I will attempt to reword. I will save my introduction for the end. Who I am is not as important about as the words that I'm about to say. In December of 1990, my dad drove from Greensburg, Pennsylvania to San Diego, California. He arrived, knocked on the door. My stepmom called out for him to enter. My dad opened the door. My stepmom shot him. She murdered him. The now Superior Judge Link sent her to prison and said that battered women syndrome was at play, but not an excuse for premeditated murder. They dropped the charges from first-degree murder to involuntary manslaughter after my testimony. I was 10 years old on the stand testifying about the time that my dad tried to cut off my fingers. My stepmom was a sex worker. She was abused by my dad. When she escaped his abuse, she took her money with her. My dad started trading me to his friends in exchange for substances, and they gave me ice cream money. I was a child sex trafficking victim. When my stepmom murdered my dad, she actually saved my life. Sex trafficking is not the same thing as prostitution. I was not a 9-year-old prostitute. I was a child sex trafficking victim being targeted and raped by pedophiles. Sex trafficking and prostitution simply are not the same thing. In my early 20s, I was arrested for prostitution. Law enforcement justified my arrest as saving me. They didn't save me. My arrest for prostitution is what created every barrier I've had with housing and access to other survival resources. My arrest for prostitution allowed companies to labor traffic me for months without pay before letting me go because prostitution didn't fit with their company values. My arrest made me more vulnerable to both labor trafficking as well as sex trafficking. The police didn't save me from anything. In fact, they destroyed my life and ensured sex work would be the only option I have available to survive. Sex trafficking is not prostitution. Again, I was not a 9-year-old prostitute. When I was arrested as an adult for prostitution, I was not a sex trafficking victim. I was a prostitute trying to make a living and care for my family, just like many of you do every day to receive your paycheck. It is called work. Please listen to sex workers. The criminalization of prostitution disproportionately impacts sex trafficking victims and survivors, poor women, substance users, transgender individuals, migrant workers, and people of color. Prostitution is not inherently violent. Violent men who prey on and target prostitutes are violent. Violent men target us because we are criminalized. There has been significant research conducted and compiled by Coyote, Rhode Island, in which you already have access to. I encourage you to look into the information provided and listen to folks with lived experiences. Sex workers have voices. We are the experts in our own lives. It is time to center lived experiences, don't you think? Prostitutes selling sexual services is no different than lawmakers selling intellectual services. We are both providing a service for a paycheck. We are just utilizing different body parts to receive our paycheck. Full-service sex workers and sex trafficking survivors are not looking for saviors. We are looking for solidarity. Please pass House Bill 5250. My name is Gabrielle Monroe, she, her. I am a childhood sex trafficking survivor, an adult sex trafficking survivor, and a prostitute of over 20 years. I'm co-founder of Survivor Siblings. Please let me know if you have any questions. Thank you for your time and consideration tonight.
Thank you, Gabrielle. Are there any questions from the committee for Gabrielle, please? Okay, Gabrielle, we're going to move to our next witness. Thank you for your testimony. Hello, Scott.
Hi.
Hi, Scott. This is Representative Casey from the House Health and Human Services Committee. You are testifying on House Bill 5250. If you could turn down your listening device. We're getting a little feedback.
Turn it down. Okay.
And you have our attention and you have the floor. Please be advised that we have had everybody who is testifying before you and after you in favor of the bill. If you can keep your commentary brief, that would be appreciated. Go right ahead.
Yes, sir. Thank you. So my name is Scott Cunningham. I'm a professor of economics at Baylor University. I've been studying sex work for around 13 years. I support the legislation. I'm considered at least a competent scholar in the area of regulation of sex markets and areas around contemporary sex work on the internet. I am primarily an empiricist, and I believe that the legislation would be very valuable for the state of Rhode Island and its legislators to have a committee such as this, so that the newest literature that's been emerging over the last 20 years with regards to differences in how these markets can be regulated could be incorporated into your knowledge about different ways that countries and states have tried to manage manage this type of work as opposed to just one model of prohibition. Some of this literature, the reason why I believe it's really of critical importance is that there's an increasingly large body of work that's finding that alternative policies appear to be impactful on the safety of women, both in terms of violence against them, reducing it. This is, a group of people that are very vulnerable, but sometimes there's even evidence finding that new policies are reducing violence in the community more generally for reasons that are still being explored. There's even findings of, consistently, there appears to be findings that different ways of moving away from a pure prohibition model, one that allows more, less overt regulation of that sort, is even reduces sexually transmitted infections for reasons that are spelled out in a lot of these studies. So I think that I strongly support the bill, because I ultimately, as an economist, feel that we want to have policies that reduce the harm and the social costs of our laws themselves, and not all policies, even well-meaning ones, actually do achieve that. Some of them actually do the opposite. And to have a committee that could sort through all of this, expansive new literature, I think would be very valuable. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry. Thank you very much, Scott. Are there any questions for our witness from the committee? If not, we will move on to our last verbal testimony. Hello, Ryan.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Ryan. How are you tonight?
I'm doing fine, thanks, Chairman. I hope you're doing well as well.
Doing well. I have you here to testify on House Bill 5250. This is the study commission from Representative Williams. If you would go ahead and keep your commentary as brief as you can. I'll give you a little leeway because I'm familiar with you and I know you'll keep it brief on your own. Go right ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I always know it's points for brevity. But I'm Ryan Holt. I'm the Director of Legislative Affairs for Attorney General Noronha, testifying in support of Resolution 5250 by Chairwoman Williams. We are in support of the study commission. Within this resolution, we believe that an evidence-based approach to lawmaking is important, particularly with this issue, as I certainly heard from other speakers tonight. That we would need to hear from going forward on this. We need to hear from the stakeholders, and this issue certainly warrants a closer look. And with that, I thank the chairwoman for once again introducing this, and once again urge support.
All right. Well, thank you, Ryan. Are there any questions for Mr. Holt from the Attorney General's office? Okay, hearing none. Thank you, Ryan. We're going to move on.
Thank you, Chairman. Have a good night.
Before I close the hearing, I will read all the names of everyone who has submitted written testimony to us. If you will all just bear with me for one moment. Christine Zozula from Providence. All of these people are in favor of the legislation. Shauna Wells from West Warwick. Jessica Avazinas. Jordan Goyette. Bella Robinson. She actually testified for us in person. Jordan Root from Providence. Colleen Falconer from Worcester, Mass. Tara Burns, she is a researcher and lobbyist from Alaska. Jean Almo, resident of Los Angeles, California. Jocelyn Foyer from the Woman Project. Alex Denisevich. Henry Bix, founder of Ishtar Collective. Melissa Brudu, JD, MPH from SOAR Institution. Angie Elione, Maxine Dugan from the Executive Service Providers Legal Ed and Research Project. Patience Crozier, Esquire, from GLAD Legal Advocates. Anthony Lombardi, Esquire, from GLAD Legal Advocates. Ricci Joy Levy, President of the Woodhull Freedom Foundation. Barbara Gianola from the Rhode Island Clinical Social Worker. Nina Wolf Landau, she is a Providence resident. Barbara Brentz, Professor of Sociology at the University of Nevada. She also testified verbally. Hillary Levy Friedman, President of Now RI. R.J. Thompson, Esquire, from the Sex Workers Project of the Urban Justice Center. Jay Copita, President of Why Not Group. Marianne Verone, Providence resident. Catherine Preston, also a Providence resident. Alex Andrews from SWOP, Behind Bars. Caitlin Bailey from the Oldest Profession podcast. Ronald Weitzer from George Washington University. Jennifer Lima. Manisha Shah, a professor at UCLA Luskin School of Public Affairs. Marissa Day, Executive Director of Gays and Lesbians Living in Trans from, I'm not sure if that's from Providence. Erica McDonald, a Providence resident. Christine Sardinia, Director of the Desiree Alliance. Hannah Stern from the ACLU, who also had verbal testimony. Savannah Sly from the national coordinator for the Old Pro Project. Jennifer Griffith, Esquire, from the Office of Child Advocates. And Kevin Alcoyne, the acting director of RIDCYF. That will conclude our hearing. Representative Williams?
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry. This is June Speakman.
Yes, go ahead.
Just to make sure we don't run into the same problem we had before, I believe that Rhode Island Now was going to do phone-in testimony. Would you check that?
Okay, I will do that right now. If everyone will just stand by for one moment. And,
thank you, Mr. Chairman.
There are also,
thank you, Representative Speakman, because they did sign up for that. Thank you.
Thank you for doing that. There are also two other people who have written testimony, a Ramona Flower from New York City, as well as Laurel Leak from Providence. And if everyone will just stand by, we're trying to reach someone from RI Now on the phone.
It's Hillary Levy Friedman.
Yep.
Can you give him 2 seconds? The guy that we couldn't get?
Yes. Yes. If anyone on the committee has a contact phone number for RI Now that they could forward to me, I would appreciate that. We're trying to raise somebody to testify.
Rep.
Okay.
Casey, check your phone.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, thank you very much. I had 3 representatives send me the same information. You all know who you are. I appreciate that. Hillary, we have you on the line. Just one second here. Hello, Hillary Friedman.
Thank you so much. Thank you to you, Chair Casey, for making sure this happened, and to Chair Williams and Representative Speakman. Yes, I am Hillary Levy Friedman. I'm president of the Rhode Island chapter of the National Organization for Women. Now, I feel a lot of pressure here to be quite profound, and I'm not sure I can be quite as eloquent as some of the other speakers, but I did want to make sure we go on the record that we are in support of House Resolution 5250. This is really important work for lots of reasons, but number one, I think part of what people heard tonight is there's a lot of education that needs to take place about consent, about commercial sex work, about coercion, exploitation, and trafficking. And the establishment of this commission would address the critical need to examine and bring together that evidence, as the Attorney General's office mentioned, which would both create and inform policies that protect sex workers' safety. So what we look forward to is a balanced study on the health and safety impacts on the state's commercial sexual activity laws, and that's going to help to create a safer and regulated environment for sex workers everywhere. So one thing I know that we all agree on, everyone who's on this committee, is that we should not be compounding discrimination, and that's one of the most important things that I think the creation of this commission will explore. So voting yes on H5250 is not voting yes on decriminalizing sex work right now, but it is recognizing that this is an enduring issue with a unique context in the history of our state. So I also want to thank Coyote for all their work on this. Call off your old tired ethics, which probably captures a lot of the things that we need to grapple with moving forward on this issue. So thank you for following through here and making sure I had an opportunity to speak, and I appreciate your time.
Thank you so much. Are there any questions for our witness? Okay, with that, I will close the hearing on House Bill 52.
Chairman, may I ask a question, please?
Yes, Representative Williams, go right ahead. Chairwoman Williams?
Did the Attorney General send in any type of written support letter or correspondence of any kind?
I'm getting the nod from the clerk that they did send in written testimony as well as their verbal testimony from Ryan Holt.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much. And I want to thank the committee for being patient.
Yes, you should be able to access that on the website, and everybody in the general public should be able to access that information on the website. So
Thanks
with that,
again. Have a good evening.
yes, with that, I will close the House hearing on House Bill 5250.